If Penn State beats Oregon, is Penn State the number 1 seed for the college football playoff?
No.
Who is it? Georgia, Texas winner?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think Ole Miss should be ranked ahead of Alabama, so what do I know?
Why do you say that, big homie? What's your because obviously they didn't play each other, but resumes are pretty similar.
Yeah.
Why would you put them there?
They had to play they buried South Carolina at South Carolina's place, and they beat Georgia more handily. I don't understand it. But I've given up. After seeing the rankings last night and having Miami in between those two, I get it. But that's the way I see it. When I watch those teams, I trust Ole Miss more than I trust Alabama.
So you basically like the wins part versus looking at the loss part. Who did you beat versus who was your loss to?
Well, if you want to look at the losses, they lost on a 4th and 7 that I think is the only one Kentucky completed all year. You lost to a really good Florida team at their place. And what's the other one?
LSU and OT.
Oh, they led the whole game until the last play of the game.
I think you just made a great argument, Davey.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's a good point. We already did Oregon versus Penn State. What's the keys for you in that matchup?
Penn State's offense. I don't know what they could do. They've shown ways to be creative using Warren the way they do it. I love it being a former tight end. But I think it hurts their identity. That's not an identity thing. They don't have receivers that could separate. And what I always like to do, I think Georgia did this a bunch last year when they got in trouble, the last couple of years, is throw the ball to your running backs. If you have NFL running backs, throw it to them. If those guys are going to run off coverage and they can't separate, use the backs in the passing game. And I do think Penn State's defense has difference makers, unlike Ohio State's defensive front that I've talked and watched long enough these last 4 years. Penn State's got some dudes, and I don't think I don't think Oregon's speed will affect them as much as people are saying it's going to be. I expect Penn State to play really well in a true underdog role here.
I'm loving the case he just made right there. That's very impressive case, because we both were kind of leaning Oregon in that matchup because of a lot of it's Gabriel.
He didn't say he was taking Penn State.
Yeah.
He was telling you why he could lean a little bit towards Penn State, and probably for purposes beyond the show. I'm sure Stanford Steve is going to put that on the board this week.
Penn State with that 3.5, I will for sure have. And hey, while we're debating schedules and all this, Oregon's schedule hadn't been great. Like it's been a lot of no chance to get challenged, and then they find themselves in a dogfight in Madison, Wisconsin against a bad Wisconsin team. So I'm just fired up to see them get challenged. And see what they bring to the table there.
Well, and Steve, something that's cool that they got a chance to come into the Big Ten as a newcomer and beat the 3 top dogs with Ohio State, with Michigan, and Penn State, who has run that conference. And I hear what you're saying about Oregon, but they've also won 7 games by 21 or more points, and they've been very dominant. And Dylan Gabriel, by the way, I mean, that dude's been in college football for a long time. First trivia question for you. Who has the second most starts in college football history next to Dylan Gabriel?
Bo Nix.
Gosh dang it.
Well, he did just cover his game in Denver this past week.
By the way, I looked up the same thing last year because I was wondering how many more people than Bo Nix had it.
Yeah, 60. Bo Nix had 61 starts, and Gabriel, man, most TDs in NCAA history, most receiving yards thrown for. Like he's been great for a long time. I trust him.